First thing on the makeup, I had, I think 2 that said they want to redo the math problems. So we'll do that. Unless I hear otherwise, we'll do it Tuesday, like at 9:55. So or no, let's do it Thursday. Can you do it Thursday? Let's do it Thursday at 9:55. Now I had one person turn in an essay they made more than 70% on. So what I did on that one is I saw how many more extra points they would have gotten and seeing what that would have done to the question they got less than 70% on, and I got them up, so the extra points, y'all know what I mean? So I gave them some credit for that. But if you didn't get below 70 on anything, you shouldn't resubmit anything because it's not going to do. I'm trying to help the students that completely bombed a question because they've been having me before. So if you made a 98 on everything, don't resubmit. I have students that do that. Why didn't I get 100? So, so next Thursday, the reason not next Tuesday, this is what I want you to do next Tuesday. So in lieu of class, I'll email this out on Friday. I want you to watch this movie. I'll give you the link. Hopefully this link still works. I keep losing my link. I really like this movie. It is very old. It's 10 years old, but it's still very, very current. So hopefully it will work. You may have to sign in or something. So we'll have to test it and see. Some of y'all might try testing it. And if y'all have Vimeo accounts, I don't know if what brings you here. I don't know what brought me here. I guess other. Yeah, that would help them. Yeah, so I have to keep looking. So if I can't find it, it's going to be pretty upsetting. We'll have class if I can't find it. And I'll just have to walk you through. I'm pretty sure we can find it somewhere. So maybe that's it there. We'll see if it'll let me do it. It does this for a few seconds at the beginning, so don't panic. It's a nice sound though, isn't it? But what I like about this movie is it covers a lot of issues we're talking about, but you're hearing from people in the field, actual doctors telling you that we're not making this stuff up. This is actual real life stuff. People are being harmed by this. I can't get it to, it won't let me advance. I don't know how long it does that for, but it is, I do remember that it did that. There's not like a, oh, there we go. There's a lot of yeah, it's just really bizarre.
Always another person's income.
So
And income.
It's 1 minute and 30 seconds in.
Political defenses.
There's people you're gonna love in this video, like this guy. This guy is one of the honest. I think he's the one that says I'm paid to harm my patients.
Than the average Western European country students. But the part that I'm most worried about is the waste that actually brings patients.
So that's the key, what we're talking about. Waste that actually does harm. That's not a good system, is it? I'm kind of convinced our criminal justice system is just as bad. A lot of wasted money that actually does more harm than good. That's what they're arguing in this video. Now, there's people you're going to like, and there's people you might not like.
For next to Costa Rica.
There's some painful stuff in here. So there's probably going to be your favorite person in the video. He's in there a lot. This guy here, pretty interesting. This is the story I was telling you about. He wants to spend millions of dollars to keep her alive. The doctors say she's already gone. So you'll hear his discussion. You can understand his predicament. You ask someone, do you want us to keep your mom alive? What do you say? Of course, do whatever it takes. That's what he said. But again, what would she say if you asked her? This guy you're gonna like, he tells it like it is. He's pretty good. You're gonna like him, you're gonna like her. If I can get to it. It's not taking me to where the clip shows it's going, but this lady here, She tells it like it is. And then there's one guy that they just really beat up. It might have been this one. I might have gotten him wrong. This guy from UCLA, he might be the one. He might be the one they really, really beat up. They say this number shows they're doing horribly, blah, 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 really, really terrible. And they go him to, yeah, but we could probably explain some of those numbers. I mean, yeah, they're horrible, but we probably have an excuse, he doesn't really defend himself. If that's the right guy. They do a lot on breast cancer, on prostate cancer, on pregnancy. This guy you may not like. You can see. Let me know what you think about him. No, this guy in particular. So
Really not for white people.
yeah, this guy kind of some people just might a little bother you a little bit. So get into this. There's some pretty tough issues on here. Asking where we should spend our money and how we should spend it. I love this guy here. This is a patient. So the previous guy had major surgery for prostate cancer. He's talking about how it saved his life. It might have. There was one chance in 14 it saved his life. There was 13 chances out of 14. It was a waste of time and money. This guy is talking to his doctor, and the doctor says, why don't we just monitor it? If it gets worse, we'll have the surgery. If not, you don't have to have the surgery. He's like, yeah, that sounds good. And he leaves. The first guy is like, this is the end of the world. I'm going to die. I better have this surgery. And he's in tears. This guy's, yeah, let's monitor it. It's two very, very different approaches. One costs thousands of dollars. He said, let's monitor it. Which would you rather be? Well, it all depends on, am I going to live or am I going to die? Isn't that the question? The first guy says it saved my life. There is a slight possibility that's true. There's like a 7% chance that's true. There's a 93% chance it was all a big waste of money. This guy says, I'll have the surgery when it's apparent. So this guy's not saying, I'm not going to have the surgery and he's leaving. He says, I won't have the surgery now, but we're going to monitor. So that's something you have to ask, which makes more sense. And who should be making those decisions if we as taxpayers are paying for it? What if we make decisions as taxpayers and 2 people die that wouldn't have died? But 50 people who would have had serious health complications from the surgery wouldn't have had those complications. You see what we're talking about. You have the surgery, 1 person lives, the other 13, 6 of them have horrible complications that really mess up the rest of their lives. And 7 of them, their lives are saved and they have a great life. These are not easy decisions to make. So think about that. One way to think about it is my own personal experience. So I had a surgery I wish I hadn't had now. I wish I'd been that last guy I was just showing you. So my doctor said, take out, not yank out. He might have said that, and I wasn't listening. Thyroid. This is an ENT. What do ENTs do? They love surgery. It's their favorite thing to do. So my surgeon was telling me I should have surgery. What questions should I have asked? See, what is probability I die without the surgery? Right? I should have asked that.
How will it impact your quality of life?
Yeah, what are the complications from the surgery? What is the probability I die in the surgery? That may be, what if this is 0.3% and this is 0.2%? Should I have the surgery? Here's the question I'll worry about today. What is the probability all that radiation after surgery will shorten my life? Wouldn't that be an interesting question? What if this is 0.3%, this is 0.2%, and this is 0.5%? Then what do? You want the surgery now? I mean, is this a legitimate question? I'm sitting in a hotel room. I mean, a hotel room. No, not a hotel room, in a hospital room. And all my visitors come in with hazmat suits on. Do you think I was exposed to something dangerous? They're not exposed to what I was exposed to. They're exposed to me who's been exposed to something. Do you think I was exposed to something dangerous? I would say probably so. When they tell me I can't go shopping at HEB because I might harm pregnant women, does it sound like I was exposed to something dangerous? That sounds pretty dangerous to me. Could that shorten my life? Absolutely. If I'd asked these questions, what would he have said? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So what decision do I make? I don't know. What does he want me to do? Well, it's the surgery because he makes money on the surgery. The question you're going to get in this movie is, why don't we know? You're going to hear that a lot in the movie. We don't have the data. We don't know if we're helping this patient or not. That's pretty sad. We know we're making money giving them the surgery. We don't know if we're helping them or not. We may be killing them. We may be saving their life. We may be saving their lives, but ruining it later. We just don't know the answer to that question. So this is what we call, you'll see it in the movie, evidentiary, and I can't spell it, medicine. How do you spell evidentiary? I can't spell medicine either. Evidentiary, evidence, let's call it evidence-based medicine. Is that close? Evidence-based medicine. The movie talks a lot about that in a very passionate way. How can we not know? And the fact that we don't know, how can we not be desperately trying to get that information? Sounds like a legitimate question to ask, doesn't it? Why don't we ask that question? Because the hospitals make money doing what they're doing now. They may not want that answer because it might harm their pay, right? I wish I'd asked these questions because if he said, I don't know, then I would say, well, I don't know if I should have the surgery. How can I make a decision when I have no idea if it's going to save my life or kill me? It'd be obvious if he says, you know, you've got a 0.3% of dying if you don't get the surgery, but the surgery has a 5.5% chance of killing you, and you got a 2.3% chance of your life being shortened dramatically by having the surgery, that's pretty easy. I can make that decision pretty fast. Yeah, I think I'll wait. The other question I would have is, what is the probability I die if I do not do surgery, but monitor closely? Isn't that another option? That's what the guy with the prostate cancer was told. He wasn't told don't have the surgery. He was saying, let's monitor and see if it changes. Does that seem unreasonable? Doesn't that seem perfectly reasonable? Especially for a guy in his 70s. There's a chance he'll die from prostate cancer, but there's actually a chance he'll die from other stuff as well. There's an interesting fact I think we'll see later. What percentage of men who die in their 90s actually have prostate cancer? Is actually really high. But they don't die from that, they die from something else. Why? Because they're 90-something years old. Does it make sense for a 90-something-year-old man to have prostate cancer surgery? Probably not. It's kind of a waste of money. All right, you see where we're going here with statistics, evidence-based medicine. All right. So I'll get this link to you. Hopefully it works. Have any of y'all tried that on your laptop? See if it works. I can never remember this because I always want to do Venmo, but it's not Venmo. I don't want to send money. Vimeo. So some of y'all try this. Money in medicine. Vimeo. See if you can get into the movie. Let me know if that's working or not. You can find it other places. Yeah, you can find. I know it's available like on YouTube if you pay $5, but you don't need to do that. But it is available other places. I don't know if I actually made my own video of it. I'd probably get. But PBS did this. I've already paid for it because it's paid for by subsidized with U.S. tax dollars. So I kind of feel like I already own it, right? But I don't know. I probably wouldn't get away with that. But I think it's an excellent video. I wish they would make a new one. But I don't think much has changed since I made this video. It's not really that different. So it's very, 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 very current, even with that. I'll send you the link. I wait to send the link until right before I'm going to do it because the links keep changing. So I'm going to try this link and see if it will work. I don't know what all the other stuff was they were asking for me. If y'all have other links, you want to email them to me, let me know, and I'll put them down as well. All right, so that's going to be Tuesday's class. So you don't come here, and you don't have to watch it next Tuesday at 9 o'clock. If you want to watch it next Tuesday at 3 a.m., you can do that, but just watch it before then. You have to watch it. All right, I want you to watch it. So send me your notes, send me something to prove that you watched it. Now, there are student notes out there. One student who did watch it. So John Kim watched it. He's in the honors college, so he needed to do something for honors college. So I had him write this paper. You can't just turn his paper in as your notes, but he can help you with some of the quotes. He did a pretty good job on capturing this video. Like average day spent at UCLA, 29 days. That was the UCLA guy, I think. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it might have been him. That one guy was showing you. UCLA, boy, they beat up on UCLA. And then the Intermountain is the one they love. So average at UCLA, 29 days. Intermountain, 48 days. ICU, 12 days. ICU, 4 days. Average cost, 98,000. Average cost, 54,000. You see how the guy UCLA it was just like, poor guy was being devastated. And he was so cheerful about the whole thing. Yeah. We really don't score well on that. But he kept making excuses. We've got the toughest patients. We're so good, we got all the tough patients. That's a legitimate argument to make. But does he have data to prove that, or is he just saying? You know, it comes down to can you really prove it? So, and then the obvious question is, why are they so much better? So you're going to hear that one guy I really like. He's from Intermountain. He actually says we're better, and we're paying a price for it. We're less profitable because we're so much better. So yeah, you see, it's a choice they had to make. Let's see if I can find the harmed quote in here. There's evidence that 1.3 million men get treated for prostate cancer that will never ever harm. He's got some typos in there, harm them in their life. That's not the one I was looking for, but yeah, that one quote I just think is so good. We're paid to harm our patients, or exactly how he says it. Okay. Yeah, you got your laptops open. You're ready to go. So here he's going to talk about health insurance. His argument is when most people say healthcare reform, what they really mean is health insurance reform. They want to give more people insurance. And what was his answer last class? We should be using less insurance, not more. And healthcare reform is about using more insurance. Another great sentence. Boy, you can almost put this at the introduction to the whole paper. As far as the players, remember in introduction, you can talk about who are the players here. A wasteful insurance system, there's one of the players. Distorted incentives, a bias toward treatment, there's the doctors and hospitals. Moral hazard, hidden costs, and a lack of transparency, curbed competition, service to the wrong customer. These are the problems at the foundation of a healthcare system, resulting in a slow rot requiring more and more money just to keep the system from collapsing. Isn't that a great quote? He tries to capture it. But healthcare reform is more insurance. What did he start with? Wasteful insurance system. The system is fixed by doing more of the wasteful thing. The Obama administration and Congress are still working out the details, but it looks like this generation of comprehensive reform will not address the underlying issues any more than the previous efforts did. Instead, it will put yet more patches on the walls of edifice that is fundamentally unsound, and then build that edifice higher. He's a good writer. I like this. Hope some of y'all give me some great quotes like that. A good writer. I mean, that's your own quotes. He's not, he probably voted for Obama. This is a Democrat writing this. But you're discover there's a lot of people on the left and the right who do not think insurance is the solution. And that's what our politicians keep saying. We got to get more people insured. Most of the benefits of technology, so this goes under that technology problem. Most of the benefits of technology, record portability, the reduction in costly and dangerous clinical errors would likely accrue to patients, not to providers. In a consumer-facing industry, this alone would drive companies to make the investments to stay competitive. But of course, we patients aren't the customers. Government funding electric records wouldn't change that. So remembering technology I have as part of the problem, part of the solution. He's hinting at the solution, record portability, reduction in clinical errors. That's where technology should be used. Instead, technology is used to find more problems that we can provide surgeries for. We'll talk about electronic records more. Any of y'all dealt with doctors, you know for a fact that's an issue. You keep filling out the same paperwork. Have you ever wondered, you walk into a doctor's office, you have, the 6 pages you fill out, and half the data is the same on every page? Why don't you walk into a kiosk and type all that into a computer? So if you fill out on this paper, what happens next? Have you ever thought about that? They give you the clipboard, the pen that's been sanitized. You fill out the 6 pages, you hand it to someone. What happens next? Doesn't someone have to key that somewhere? What if they miskey stuff? Does that make sense? They ask you for your doctor. And you all know, I don't remember my doctor's name. I have to look it up. I remember his first name. So I type his first name in, San Antonio doctor, and his first name, because it's unusual first name. 7 doctors come up. I then remember his last name. Wouldn't that be easier if I did that on a computer and it just automatically filled that in and I just click on it? Why did they remember that from my previous visit? Wouldn't that be an amazing thing? What if I didn't have to write my social security number 6 times on every single form? These are obvious things to do. Now, if you walk into one of those health clinics, what's the first thing you see? A kiosk, isn't it? You walk up the kiosk and you type in and they find you and all the data is there. Now, I went to one hospital where they had all that. They came to me with an iPad and they clicked stuff and the guy talked to me for like 30 seconds and he was gone. So some hospitals have gotten to that electronic. But most doctor offices are like in the 1960s. I don't know what they're doing. It's just incredible. But then I went to my eye doctor and guess what happened to eye doctor? I filled everything in online on the internet before I even went to the doctor. When I got there, I checked in. They saw me 5 minutes later. They gave me a prescription and I left. I was out of there in 30 minutes. Why is that? Guess how much insurance paid for my eye doctor? 0. There is no insurance involved. You see what's going on here. When insurance involved, paperwork, a lot of wasted time, limited technology for me, technology that cost me more money. So you see where he's going with this. Technology in any other industry helps the consumer. And for some reason in healthcare, technology costs us more money and actually harms us. I've been so tempted to tell my doctor, it's like, your process is so incredibly inefficient. It's amazing how much time and money you waste. It's just, I actually hung up on my last doctor call. I felt bad about it, but it made me so infuriated. It was just horrible. I couldn't believe how rude this person was to me. It's like, you don't have to be that rude. I didn't have to hang up on her, but it was like, I'm sorry. It's one of those. I was hoping she thought just maybe my cell phone got disconnected because she essentially called me an idiot. And it's like, thank you. I really appreciate that. How many companies call their customers idiots? Well, healthcare, because they don't care, because insurance is their customer. And the most important single step we can take. Okay, so he's going to get into reform. The most important single step we can take is, what do you think it's going to be? Don't even look at the next sentence. Reduce insurance. He's been saying it over and over again. Get away from comprehensive health insurance. Exactly the same thing the first writer said. That's a single model for financing care. And a guiding principle of any reform should put the customer at the center of the system. He has 2 solutions. You're going to see both of them in the solutions on the rubric. Insurance for high severity, low frequency events. What does that say? Less insurance. See that? We don't use insurance for doctor visits because that's a high frequency, low severity event. What's the next thing he's saying? Unlock consumerism. Isn't that what he's saying? Unlock consumerism. How did he say it? You could quote him under lock consumerism. A guiding principle of any reform should be put the consumer, not the insurer or the government at the center of the system. Every economic system that becomes more productive, lower costs fall over time, is a consumer-driven system where the consumer votes with their pocketbook, votes with their feet. We don't do that with healthcare. We vote with our time in healthcare, but not with our dollars. All right, so what does he mean? So he gets a little radical here. With routine care funded largely out of incomes, major predictable expenses. All right, you ready for the radical? Funded out of savings and credit. He's saying end of life care is predictable. We get sick at the end of our life. It's up to us to save for that and have in our savings, and we pay for it ourselves. Or if it happens to someone young, this, you may not agree with this at all. I think most people will probably have trouble with this. Let's say a 20-something has a major health thing come up. He's saying do what? Borrow money. Does that seem kind of radical? But he's talking about predictable. So what is he talking about there? He's talking about maternity. So don't slash my tires. I'm not saying I agree with him on this. But maternity is predictable. He's saying when people have babies, they should just borrow money, pay it off over time. And then massive, unpredictable, that's where insurance should come in. Now, someone in their 20s has something unexpected happen, then yeah, insurance can cover that. But if something expected, insurance shouldn't cover that. I think pregnancy is about the only thing I can think of that would be predictable for a younger person. So you don't have to put this in your paper, but just to let you know, yeah, he's saying pregnancy should be covered by borrowing money, not by insurance. So the next thing he's going to talk about is the employer. That next one down in the solution, untie health insurance to the employer. I'm a big believer in that, actually. I don't buy my auto insurance through UTSA. I don't buy my life insurance through UTSA. I don't buy my groceries through UTSA. I don't buy my clothes through UTSA. But for some reason, UTSA provides me my health insurance. Why is that? It's just pure inertia. We're just used to it. You hear it too in the news, don't you? McDonald's doesn't provide health care to its employees. What a shameful organization. That may be true. They probably should pay the workers more. But why is it McDonald's responsibility to provide health care to the workers? They should pay them much more, but then should the workers get health care through McDonald's or get it themselves? Should USAA provide health insurance to their workers? Why can't we just buy it ourselves like we do everything else? So that's a solution you'll hear a lot from both sides, but not from politics. If you say this as a politician, you will be beat up real quickly by your opponent. So as Kamala Harris discovered real quickly. So you got to be careful as a politician, but yeah. So we should replace the web of employer and government-based insurance with a single program. So essentially what he's saying is government should provide catastrophic care. So that's an interesting one. He's not quite Bernie Sanders. He's not saying Medicare for all. He's saying Medicare reworked as only major catastrophic coverage for all. Now, what's the threshold? Here's the really shocking thing. There's his threshold, $50,000. And he wrote this article quite some time ago, so maybe it's 80,000 today. Does that seem a little high? So he's saying everybody should cover catastrophic coverage, unpredictable things that happen to people, the government should cover as long as it's over $50,000. Otherwise, you use regular insurance I think he's even talking regular insurance gets covered here, but I don't know where his break between regular insurance and the US government is on that. And he's saying all Americans should be required to buy it based on premiums based solely on age. All right, that's a pretty radical proposal. I'm sure he got beat up pretty harshly from that, from both sides. So he's a little more radical. Remember the first article, he was talking about $5,000 as being his threshold. He's talking 50,000. So typical catastrophic coverage today may cover anything over 2,000. That threshold is far too low. $50,000 or more. You have to address chronic conditions. We'll talk more about that in later articles. How should we pay for most of our healthcare? The same thing we do everything else, out of our income and savings. The government should create a new form of health savings account. So you see he's in HSA. In my list, I have it as MSA, HSA, MSA. I'm using those interchangeably. The big difference is you get to spend, if you don't spend it, you lose it. So some people say, hey, you get this medical savings account, but if you don't use it, you lose it. What's the problem with that? Well, at the end of the year, you got $1,000 left. You're going to have something done. You're going to go spend it just so you don't lose it. So you create people going out there using healthcare just so they spend their MSA. We don't want that. So most people today say, hey, if you don't spend it, you can flip it into your retirement plan. All right, so I tie all that together. Instead of insurance, we fund it ourselves from a tax-favored savings account that we can use for healthcare. So that's one of his proposals. A vehicle that has existed for a long time. Every American should be required to maintain an HSA and contribute a minimum percentage of post-tax income, subject to a floor and a cap. The income percentage required should rise over a working life as wages and wealth typically do. So he has a lot on mandates here. He's a mandator. So he's on the left. The left kind of likes mandates, although I think the right likes mandates a lot too. But he's requiring everyone. Now, what did President Obama say about mandates? He beat up Hillary Clinton on mandates. And he came into office and he started saying we need mandates. Why? Was he lying during the campaign? I actually think he came into office and he saw the math. His advisors came in and he said, you know what? I was wrong. She was right. And I do think that's the case. But it's fun as a politician to beat up your opponent for something that's unpopular. Mandates are unpopular. So he's pushing mandates. That's something you'll have to address. So this is a big issue we have. You notice up here, we have uninsured Americans and pre-existing conditions. So why are mandates so important? Well, if you don't have mandates, you don't require people to get insurance, but when they're sick, we're going to cover them. What happens? You don't buy insurance. What if you could buy auto insurance 5 minutes after your accident? Would you buy it before? Why would you? So that's the issue. If you tell me, hey, if I get sick, you're going to cover me. Why would I buy insurance now? It'd be a waste of time. So mandates say, hey, you have to buy insurance. Same thing with uninsured Americans. A lot of uninsured Americans have enough income to buy health insurance. They just choose not to. They just don't think it's worth the money. It's not because they're poor. There are a lot of poor people who can't afford insurance that aren't buying insurance. There's no question on that. But there are a large number of uninsured Americans that are not buying insurance just because they don't feel like it. If I were your age, I would be really tempted not to buy insurance. Just go for it, especially with healthcare.org. Because healthcare.org has a window where you can buy insurance no matter what your risk is. If I were your age, I'd say, you know what, I'll risk it. If I get diagnosed with some disease, then next window opportunity, I'll buy my health insurance then, and then I'll be covered. I'd be tempted to do that. But what did President Obama say? No, if you don't buy it, you're going to be penalized. Then I look at the math and say, well, what's the penalty? I don't know what the penalty was. I think the Republicans, have been talking about getting rid of it. But this is the issue. Why did Hillary Clinton say we have to have mandates? Because you don't have mandates, you're gonna have people are just gonna wait and get into the system when they need it, otherwise they won't pay into the system. Right, so this mandate's interesting. My issue on mandates is we don't need them if we move the tax credits. All right, so you're gonna see some arguments here. People have pre-existing conditions. Why is that a problem? Someone's been diagnosed with a terrible illness. They don't have insurance. They call to get insurance. The insurance company says, we can't cover you. We'll cover you for anything except for what you currently have. They can't get insurance. They're uninsurable. How do we insure people like that? Well, companies do that all the time. You get a new job, you're covered by the health insurance after a waiting period. They don't do a medical exam. They don't ask about your ailments. You can get a job at USA right now if you had a terrible illness. And after a few months, you're fully covered and there's nothing they can do about it. How do they get away with that? Because USA covers all of their employees. Everybody's covered. As long as everybody's covered, the health insurance company will take it. What won't the health insurance company do? Say, hey, if you want to be covered, you can be covered. If you don't want to be covered, don't be covered. What happens? You get this really bad adverse selection. So if you're going to cover if you're going to provide this type of thing where you can say, hey, if you have pre-existing conditions, we have to cover you. If you're going to do that, you have to force everybody to get coverage. That's the only way it works. All right, so all of these play in together. So we're going to talk about tax credits later. So this is my idea. Right now, insurance is a tax deduction to your employer. I think we should get rid of that and go to tax credits. So what would a tax credit mean? Everybody gets a $2,000 tax credits to buy health insurance, including people with no income. So how many uninsured people would you have with a tax credit?
Regarding the previous conditions, does this mean that people without pre-existing conditions are basically subsidized?
Well, the argument is that uninsured people, they may be insured because they can't get insured because they already have an ailment, so they can't buy insurance. And government says, that's not fair, you got to cover everyone. But then what happens, people, we got to cover everyone. I'm not sick, so I won't buy any insurance until I'm sick. And then when I'm sick, you got to cover me, so I'll just come into the system then. That's the argument. So what the government says is, well, if the people who aren't sick are just going to stay out of the system and only the sick people come in because we're going to cover everybody, then we can't afford anything because we're only covering sick people. So we got to force the healthy people to buy insurance so we can pay for the sick people. Y'all see how that works, all right? That's why Hillary Clinton says everybody has to get insurance. Otherwise, we're going to be anti-selected against. Only sick people are going to buy insurance because since we're saying we're going to cover everyone. When you come into the system, we have to cover you. People say, I'll just wait till I'm sick to get into the system. All right, you'll see how that works. So Hillary Clinton was correct. If I'm going to cover everybody, no matter what their pre-existing conditions are, then I've got to force everyone into the system. Otherwise, I'll end up with only sick people. My argument is you can get rid of all of that with a tax credit. If everybody has a $2,000 tax credit, if they don't use it, they lose it. What is everybody going to do? Everybody will buy insurance. I think the problem solved just like that. Now, would you mean test that? Yeah, I would say you can means test that. People making $100,000, if they don't want to buy health insurance, yeah, fine. They want to self-insure, but yeah, $2,000 credit. You can do everyone or just you can means test what you like. And I'll try to show you the math later that actually is cheaper to the federal government than their current tax deduction that they're doing. So I'll try to show y'all the math actually works out that the government can provide tax credits that are skewed toward the poor to get everybody insured overnight, and it actually saves taxpayers money. That sounds too good to be true, but I actually think it's true. All right, I can't prove it to you because I can't get all the numbers, but I do think it's true. All right, so I actually tie a lot of these things together. There's a lot of young, healthy people with good incomes that are not buying health insurance, and I think it's perfectly reasonable, especially with healthcare.gov. They can just wait if you're healthy and take the chance and then go into the system. I mean, they could have like a broken leg or something. That's true. Those are extremely expensive things that they probably could handle with credit. Right, so we'll get into this more, but there is a relationship between these issues and mandates. Why is he mandating? He's mandating because you've got to get everybody in the system because of those people with pre-existing conditions. You can't afford that. Now, I do want to give you the secret we already talked about, the truth. We need young people. Why? So we can do what? We charge them. That's the real truth of this. No one will tell you that. I'll tell you that. So no one in politics will tell you that. They need y'all remember those arguments, you heard it all the time. We got to get young, healthy people into the system. How possibly could that help? If you're paying your correct actuarial rate, it doesn't help anything. If you pay the rate you're supposed to pay, it does not leave any money to help the older, sicker people. How does it work? They grossly overcharge you so they have money to pay for the older, sick people. You people, y'all should be irate that this is going on. I mean, this isn't immaterial. I'm not saying you're overpaying 10, 20%. You're overpaying enormous amount. Well, I'm saying people should pay what they should pay. So what is he saying? People should pay based on their age, right? Where do you say that? I forgot where he said it. He said it somewhere else, but that's not what it's going to happen. You look at Obama, the Obama Affordable Care Act. It's based on age, but there's a cap. And they say older people can't pay more than X times younger people. And that cap is way too low. So they're forcing y'all to pay way too much for insurance. We're going to see the actual numbers later. Y'all realize how much my generation is ripping you off? You need to get your uncle really riled up at Thanksgiving because he's ripping you off big time. And he keeps doing it year after year. They find something new. It's like, oh, other people shouldn't be paying for that. They keep shifting everything to you. Here's a case, Affordable Care Act. In the act, they force you to pay much more for health insurance by capping how much more older people could pay for insurance. It doesn't make sense. So this is one of the reasons mandating works. Mandating works because they're forcing young people to overpay for insurance, and they're forcing you to do it by law. You have no choice. I think everyone should pay their actuarial rate all the way through, whether it's auto insurance, health insurance, life insurance, right? Everybody should pay the rate that they should pay, which means it should be really cheap for you when you're young. And as you get older, it's going to get more expensive, but you'll be wealthier when you're older. So you'll be able to afford it then. All non-catastrophic care should be paid out of your HSA. They should be allowed to drop money for any purpose without penalty once the funds exceeding the ceiling established. So at death, you leave it to your inheritance. So he's saying this is your money. You can use it for other things besides healthcare, including leaving it to your heirs. All right, here's where he gets that craziness again. This is pretty radical. What about major expenses? Appendectomy, sports injury, birth, there he has the birth, that might exceed the current balance of your account, but is not catastrophic. The stuff that's between your MSA and the 50,000, these should be funded the same way you pay for most expensive purchases that confer long-term benefits with debt. How do you think that will work politically? Probably doesn't sound well unless we write off all the debt, right? We can do that later. That would work. We would never do that with college expenses or anything else. Catastrophic coverage should apply with no deductible for young people, but as people age, they should pay as steadily increasing. So it's it's being pretty specific here. Much end-of-life care would pay through savings. Now, I don't know what he's going to say if you got someone like the lady in the video. She doesn't have, let's say she doesn't have the money. What is he saying? Pull the plug. Is that what he's saying? He doesn't actually say that here. But if he doesn't have the money, what is he saying? So he doesn't address that. That's a really touchy subject, isn't it? That's where you get into stuff where most people, but I want you in the paper. I'm not going to hold it against you. No matter what you say, you can tell me what you really think. Anyone with whom I discuss this approach has the same question: how am I supposed to be able to afford healthcare in this system? And he said, well, you're already paying a lot as it is. What if we take that 1.77 million you're throwing away at insurance and we instead give it back to you? And now you have the money you need to do all of this. So he keeps coming back to that 177 without proving that he calculated correctly. Most of that money doesn't pass through your hands. It's hidden in your company, in your Medicare taxes. But if you had access to those funds over your lifetime, wouldn't you be able to afford your own care? And wouldn't you consume health differently if you and your family didn't have to spend that money only on care? For lower income Americans who can't afford all their catastrophic premiums or MSAs, the government should fill the gap. So that's similar to the first article. We're not going to tell poor people, hey, tough luck. We're not going to be a country where people are dying in the streets because we don't provide them health care. I don't think that's going to be the case. In fact, with my tax credits, I think the poor would be better covered than any other system. So I prefer my tax credits. Some people worry that requiring people to pay. Now this, if there's one part of this article I disagree with more than any other, this is it. Worry that requiring people to pay directly for routine care will cause some to put off regular checkups. Free checkups every 2 years. I love the word free. When I see the word free, like free college education, free checkups, what I hear them saying is, all we got to do is get professors to volunteer their time. College administrators follow. If we can do that, if we can get all professors to volunteer their time, teach for free, that's free education. What does he really say? Taxpayer funded. Yeah, taxpayer funded. So that's a very different thing than free. I don't like the word free. I don't think any politician should ever be able to use the word free. When Bernie Sanders says free college education, he should say taxpayer funded college education. That's a requirement. And then he should tell me which taxpayers are going to fund it. I want to know who's paying for this. I don't like that at all. What do you think I think he should do? Well, you have tax credits to buy the insurance, or you just pay for it out of your pocket. Pay for it out of your pocket. It's the most obvious thing to do. But if you have an MSA, HSA, you could pay for it out. That to me is the same as every pocket. I consider an MSA to be your pocket. So pay for it yourself. Why not? What's my other problem? We want free checkups in a system incentivize to treat us. Do we want people going to a system that is incentivized to cut us over? Hey, doctor, see if you can find something. Oh, I'll find something. Right? Especially people over the age of 60, over half of them, there's something there. They're going to find something. You go to the doctor and say, find something and cut me open, and they'll find it. Does that really make sense? The majority of what they're going to find, we'd be better off them not finding it because we would have been perfectly fine with it in our body. Wouldn't cause our death. So I don't like this at all. We should pay for our own checkups. So pretty radical. Now, I'm not saying when you read his articles, you have to agree with them. I don't even think you don't even have to mention what they're saying, but I'm letting you know what some of these are. But you do have to explain what the solutions are. What do we mean? So you can use these authors to explain some of these things. You may strongly disagree with this particular solution, but you need to talk about it and explain why you don't like it. So how do you do that in your paper? Some people suggest we should blah, 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 blah. I disagree with this because of blah, 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 blah. Okay. So you do have to hit all of these points. Everybody understand that? Pretty critical. What do y'all think about this? Untie health insurance to the employer. What if you went to your employer and they say, we don't provide health insurance. Here's $15,000. We were going to pay $60,000. We're going to pay you $75,000. No health insurance. Would that really upset you? Would you say, I'm never working here? Why would I ever work here? Or would you prefer that? That $15,000 you got to pay tax on. When they were spending the $15,000 on you, they got to spend the entire $15,000. You only get that $15,000 after tax. Does that bother you? Now, some of that's going to go into your 401k plan. Which would you prefer? 15,000 after tax, or they use that 15,000, but they have to spend it. You don't get the choice. And that's part of it, right? The choice. If they spend it, you only get health care. If you spend it, you have more choices. Isn't that what he's saying? That 1.77 million. Right? Any views on that yet, or y'all still figuring out what your
That's the one.
you want the 15,000. Right? So you prefer to have the choice.
So, let's see, for example, I, work in a place that, they offer healthcare. I don't take it because right now I'm better than my dad's insurance.
Yeah.
Invisible. So why wouldn't I, as of right now, just take the extra money because
Right.
I'm already being tough? It's the same thing. And not only that, but because you overall, right, everybody's in an umbrella, you have a company policy, right? You may be paying for somebody that is, 73 years old and has numerous health complications. That's all coming out of your pocket. Whereas if you get that money, right, your healthcare premium might be so much more fucking, like,
Right.
that's what I'm getting small because you're not paying for somebody else's direct body.
And your poor employer offers you what, 6 plans. You get the money, you have thousands of plans you can look at. You might not have time to do all that. Yeah, USAA, what they did, they're paying all this money in my healthcare. They didn't give me that money, but what they did say is if you don't take health insurance, we'll pay you $1,000. I was working at UTSA. I said, okay, I get health insurance for UTSA. I was already getting it. I couldn't because they're paying for it. The taxpayer is paying for it. So I couldn't decline my UTSA. USAA said, I'll pay you $1,000. So I said, yeah, I'll take $1,000 from USAA and I'll just use my UTSA. Why didn't USA give me the full 15,000? That would have been a lot nicer. I'd have heard that, but they didn't because they were losing so much money. But if they got rid of everybody, yeah, they would have $15,000 per employee. So yeah, so think through this one. You may not like it, but tell me why you don't like it. Why is it better for your employer to make those decisions for you versus you make decisions? Why are they better at making the decision? Right. So he's in my camp on that. Except for this, I don't like that. If y'all like that, that's fine. Free checkups every 2 years for everybody. He does talk about technology. We'll get into this more with orders. I think I'm okay. At the very end, he gets into his dad. So his dad's bill was $636,000, $637,000. And a lot of that was the hospital fixing the error they had on his dad. So they made money off of their own mistake. He was charged $11,590 a night. What's the most you've ever spent on a hotel? I think $1,500 is the most I've ever spent in a hotel for a night. It was a really nice hotel. It had chandeliers in the bathroom. I had my own butler. I'd never had a butler before. But I could have stayed in a semi-private hospital room for $7,400 a night. So that hotel sounds pretty good. It's like, hey, could I just go to this hotel and y'all just meet me there? Where do you spend $7,400 a night? There probably are hotels that are $7,400 a night. They're probably 8,000 square foot with a pool in the living room. This is a semi-private room. So you got a sheet in the middle of the room separating you and somebody else. $145,000 for drugs. Even the most casual effort to compare these prices to marginal costs or costs of off-the-shelf components, the absurdity of these numbers. But why should my mother care? Her bill was only $992. Who's paying for this? They say Medicare is paying for it, but who's paying for this? You are. Because Medicare is so default, your generation's paying for Medicare. There's no, we're gonna see the numbers later. It's pretty shocking. You can feel grateful for the protection currently offered, only if you don't realize how much you truly spend to fund the system over your lifetime, and if you believe you're getting good care in return. Would our healthcare system be so outrageously expensive if each family directly spent even half of that money that it contributed to health insurance and Medicare over a lifetime, instead of entrusting care to massive government and private intermediaries? Like its predecessors, Obama administration treats additional government funding as a solution to unaffordable healthcare rather than as cause. The current reform will likely expand government's already massive role, all just to continue illusion that someone else is paying for our care. How would this be different if she had to pay that entire thing out of her own pocket? Do you think she'd be? Well, one thing you're going to see, I think it's in the movie. It might be in, I know it's in one of the articles. It's kind of interesting. This guy is told they have to do an extra test. They tell him when he's on the gurney being rolled into surgery. And his question is, well, how much is that going to cost me? So, oh, we don't know. He says, well, you're not rolling me in there until you tell me how much this is going to cost me. Imagine this. You go to the auto mechanic. So there's something wrong with my car. You leave it with them. And you ask how much is it going to cost? Says, oh, we don't know that. We might find a lot of other stuff we got to do. Could be $1,000, could be $637,000. We don't know. Would you leave your car with that mechanic? Anybody in their right mind would do that? Wouldn't it be nice to have a business where you can say, hey, you know what? I think that's an extra 140,000 right there. Oh yeah, we definitely do that. We're going to look at an article where some physician was walked in and observed the surgery. Oh, there's 50,000. You got to pay him. What were you? I was the attending surgery. Why were you attending? Well, I didn't have any other surgery to do, so I decided to watch your surgery. That was 50,000. I don't want to pay for that. When did you agree to pay for that? Well, you signed some paperwork that said, hey, if some surgeon accidentally trips and falls into your surgery, you got to pay him $50,000. It's just insanity. No one would do that. Why did she do this? Because she's not paying for it. But if she was paying for it, she'd be able to say, okay, how many surgeons are in there? How many surgeons do we need? How many nurses are in there? Why am I getting this? Why am I paying $5,000 for a contraption to help me put socks on that I'm never going to use? It's absolute insanity. You can feel grateful for that, but can we spend this better? But let's forget about the money for a moment. Aren't you also likely to get worse care in any system where providers are accountable to insurance companies and not to us? Imagine my father's hospital had to present the bill for his care, not to the government, but to the mother. Do you really believe the hospital, forced to face the victim of its poor quality service, forced to collect a bill from a real customer, wouldn't have figured out how to make its doctors wash their hands? How much of this bill was because they infected him with some disease because someone was careless and didn't do the obvious thing? There's a lot of infuriating things here. I believe this about healthcare. I believe it about our criminal justice system. And it's all about incentives. The incentives are so bad that the system is absolutely destroying us, right? I really hope y'all get in major arguments at Thanksgiving. I don't want to ruin your Thanksgiving, but I'm hoping you do. Do y'all have relatives showing up at Thanksgiving that this would be really touchy? Do y'all have any doctors in your family? You could bring this up to. I want you to find someone. I had one student. This was so wonderful. Their mom was, I can't remember what, she was in the medical field. He had a long discussion at Thanksgiving with his mom. And it was so wonderful when he came back, her perspective. And she agreed with almost everything we're saying here, but her perspective, he put a lot of it into his paper. It was very fascinating to me, where he's quoting. I gave him, I counted that as his entire 10% on the other. That whole conversation, he put a whole section on my conversation with my mom at Thanksgiving. I thought it was wonderful. See if y'all can do that. Y'all know people in this field. I would count that as your 10%. If you have a doctor in your family, go talk to them. A friend that's a doctor, go talk to them. You started off the conversation, you won't believe what my crazy idiot professor said. And get into it and see what they say. Y'all can teach me a lot on this. I'm not in the field, I'm on the insurance side. You can teach me a lot. I would love that. That would be wonderful. All right. That's one of the longer ones we're gonna do. Here, let's do a shorter paper. This one's an old paper, but it's still true. If we go to these HSAs, MSAs, high deductibles, maybe not 50,000, but $5,000 deductibles, does it impact some people more than other people? And one area in particular impacts is women versus men. Definitely does. High deductible do impact women, largely because women need many routine medical exams that quickly add up. The median expense for men after 45 is $500. For women, it's $1,200. So do we need to do something here? Is it fair? When an employer switches all of employees to consumer-driven health plan, it is the same as giving all women a $1,000 pay cut on average, because women on average have $1,000 more in healthcare than men. So I just want you to address it. I put it in the wrong place because I didn't know where to put it. I put it under solutions. And the reason I put it there is, here's your solution, but think about how it impacts people disproportionately. All right, so my male students say, big deal, look at my auto insurance. Okay, I can buy that. Our big deal, look at my life insurance. We die faster, we have more auto accidents. Women say, yeah, but my medical bills aren't higher because I'm a stupid driver. They're higher because I'm a woman. Your auto is higher because you're a horrible driver. So you can go either direction on this. I even suggested we should get a bunch of economists together and they figure out how much more it costs to be one versus the other. What do you think adds up more? So you can add them all, all these different things, put it together. So we figure out it costs $713 more on average to be a woman than a man. So we're going to throw an extra $700 tax credit in for women. I don't know, some crazy idea, but at least address it. But yeah, most of the men in my class say, who cares? We pay more for these other insurance. So, so whatever you want to do, I just, at least it needs to be addressed. Maybe it's not even men versus women. Maybe there's other things. There are certain diseases that hit certain races more than other races. Certainly there's a disease that, because Americans of our eating habits, we say, well, Americans, because the food industry pushes really bad food on us. Maybe we shouldn't have to, all those kind of things you can think about. So that's kind of a catch-all, but I gave you the one article. So that article can certainly be in there. It's an old article, but I can't find any updated numbers. And it's a short article. I think I got this out of the Wall Street Journal. I can't remember. No, San Antonio Express News. Yeah. So I wish I could get a more current one. All right, the next thing I want to do, and we'll do this mainly on Thursday. I'm doing it a little out of order. I want to go to Porter's next, because I want you to see Porter before you do the movie. So y'all have heard of Michael Porter. I think all of you have. Anyone not heard of Michael Porter in here? What is he famous for? I know Ashley and Chris know, because we're talking about it, weren't we? What is Porter famous for? Porter's 5 forces. Y'all heard that, and Robert? So Porter's 5 forces. Y'all know he's also heavy in the healthcare. He does everything. I don't know how this guy ever sleeps, because it's just amazing what he does. Another somewhat old article, but I can't find a more current one from him. So this is all about solutions. And what his solution is about, this is where we're talking about. My word, the word value is in there 106 times. Look at that. Value-based healthcare. I already gave you that formula. Anybody remember the formula for value? A few classes ago, you may have forgotten about it. So value equals something divided by something. Yeah, cost divided by things that matter. He gives you a great list of things that matter in this article. I think he even has a table. So here it is. Mortality rate, does that matter to you? One doctor mortality rate's 5%, another doctor's mortality rate's 1%. Would that be interesting to you before a surgery? You'll be shocked at how wide the range is. It's pretty amazing. Functional level achieved. Can you still walk afterwards? Can you still feed yourself afterwards? Those might be important. Pain level, anybody care about that? Would you rather your pain level be 9 or 3? Have you ever seen Brian Regan, the comedian? Oh, I love Brian Regan. You need to look up Brian Regan and do his hospital visit. It's so hilarious. I don't know, y'all probably won't laugh, but he has me double over laughing. He's a very clean comedian, which I kind of like, but he is so hilarious. But he does a pain level discussion, which just cracks me up. Huh? Oh, that's part of it. Have you seen that? Isn't that hilarious? Oh, I think it's funny. I shouldn't ask you. Your generation probably doesn't think anything I think is funny. It's funny. Extent of return to physical activities. Is that important? You can run, you can go to gym, you can go back to work. Time to begin treatment, time to return to physical activities, time to return to work. Delays and anxiety, pain during treatment, length of hospital stay, infection. So that's what he means by things that really matter. What matters to you as a patient? No one ever asked that question. So he gives a really good list of that. So I love what he's saying. It makes perfect sense to me. He calls it, great term here, he calls it outcome-based medicine or value-based medicine. Either one is great. We measure the healthcare system based on the outcomes, not based on how many treatments they do. We don't measure it based on how many surgeries, but how the people are living their lives afterwards. First, are they alive? Secondly, can they do things they could do before? That's what he's after, value-based medicine. But the word value includes costs. So people may be better off afterwards, but if it costs $20 million, that may not be a good system. All right, so we have to put costs in there because we can't just spend anything. We won't. And so how do you manage those two things? And he says something really radical. He has a community-based measurement. I don't think he's quite figured out how we're going to do this, but essentially what he's saying is, okay, XYZ organization, you're responsible for Bexar County. We're going to measure you on costs, and we're going to measure you on outcomes. So outcomes, how many people with diabetes are in San Antonio when you started? We better have a lower number at the end. And doctors say, well, we can't control that. Well, yeah, you can. You've got to figure out how to get San Antonians to exercise, to take their pills, to lose weight. And the medical system says, that's not our responsibility. And he says, yes, it is. You're now responsible for the diet and exercise of the people in your community. How do we do that? Well, you might have a nurse actually go and visit patients. What? Yeah. You need to make sure they're doing what they need to be doing. The doctor said, we don't care about that because if they don't exercise, guess what? We make more money. It's like, no, that's not the system anymore. The system is how healthy are your patients. That sounds pretty radical, doesn't it? But that's what he's saying. That's how you pay for the system. The system is paid based on outcomes, not based on volume. Stefan, you had a question? All right, so we're going to walk through this article. It's pretty radical as well. There's a whole section in the rubric just on this. So this is pretty important. So we're going to cover that right there. Do you notice anything about the scoring? It's about 8% of the paper right there. Okay. So it's a big part because I think it's really important for us to handle this. Okay. So next class, we'll get into that. Everybody see where we're going? Y'all keeping up with me? No one slowed me down this time. So, all right, you almost have a fifth of your paper written by this point. So, all right, let's stop there. So next Thursday, if you want to make up problem 3, we'll do it like at 9:55 or so. You can only make up one problem, so don't make up two or three. You make up one. So pick the one where you had the most points. So tonight we're going to focus on almost the very last thing on the list. It might be the last thing on the list other than other. So Michael Porter. Now, if you go out to the internet and do a search on Michael Porter and try to find something that's more current than 2013, you're not going to really find, you're going to find this presentation, but I mean, this paper bit is presentation. So this was interesting, a presentation he did in 2017. There's some interesting charts, but there's the value formula he puts out. I might have done it SWIPs with costs on top, whatever, but outcomes that matter over the cost of delivering those outcomes. That's his definition of value. So that's really important. You're going to talk about Porter. You start with that. But he's talking the patient, make it more valuable to the patient. So everything he's going to do is going to be measured from the standpoint of the patient, not from the standpoint of the hospital or the government or the insurance company. So this one is the same paper you have, but just done as a PowerPoint presentation. So there's stuff out there you can find. I don't think you're going to find anything more current than this article. So essentially he said, here's my solution. And now he's just going around and trying to get it accepted. Similar to what we're saying, it's almost just a PowerPoint of what we're looking at. So let's figure out what he's arguing for. I don't think it's fully fleshed out because I think there's some sounds really, really good, but it seems really impractical when you really think about it. And details are the devil's in the detail. But let's get through some of what his definitions are and what his proposals are. So he starts off with a pretty bold title. The strategy, not a strategy. He says the strategy. That so implies that there's no others. The strategy that will fix healthcare. So, but this is Michael Porter. I guess he has a right to be pretty bold. So, around the world, every healthcare system is struggling. I used to have more articles in the last set of articles we're going to look at. I had more articles talking about the UK system because I did want to make this point. There seems to be this sense that healthcare is failing in the United States and it's working wonderfully in Canada and the UK and in Costa Rica. And that's just not true. Every country is struggling with healthcare. Rising costs. So some of this could go in the introduction part of your paper if you wanted to, but rising costs, uneven quality despite the hard work of well-intentioned, well-trained clinicians. So rising costs is a problem in the UK as well as in the United States. Uneven quality is an issue around the world, probably more so in the US and other places. So he wants a fundamentally new strategy. So it somewhat says off the bat, the solution is not to copy the UK, it's not to copy Canada, it's not to copy Medicare. He's saying it's something pretty radical. And there you have it right there. At its core is what? Maximizing value for the patient. Achieving the best outcomes at the lowest cost. So that's his thing. He hasn't proposed anything yet, but is it the obvious? It seems like it should be the obvious, but maybe he doesn't think the players in this actually think that's what they're supposed to be doing. We must move away from supply-driven healthcare. That's a pretty important concept. Supply-driven healthcare organized around what physicians do. We're going to talk more about that, the volume, treatment-focused healthcare system, and towards a patient-centered system organized around what patients needs. It sounds mom and apple pie, doesn't it? So far, just yeah, sure. Who wouldn't want to do that? We must shift the focus from the volume. So here it gets a little more specific. From volume and profitability of services to patient outcomes. That would be a good way to introduce what he's talking about. From volume to outcomes. The next thing he's gonna say, no, this is complete, this is a new thing. He talks a lot about a fragmented system. So what does he mean by a fragmented system? So he doesn't like these small community hospitals. If you need a major surgery, he wants you to travel 500 miles, 1,000 miles. And why is that? Because what's the key on a really difficult surgery? You want the doctor who says, hey, this is my third time to do this. I think I might get it right this time. Is that the doctor you want? Or you want the doctor who's done 3 of them just in the last hour and you're his next patient and he did 40 of them last week? Volume is extremely important on this. He doesn't want these small community hospitals trying these Herculean things. So he wants people flown in these major hospitals that do one thing extremely well, very efficiently, go there. So every local provider offers a full range of service with a system in which services, particular medical conditions are concentrated in health delivery organizations. So there's certain things that should go to certain places where there's high volume, high expertise. They're going to do it better, get rid of the errors. They're going to do it cheaper. So yeah, you're going to have local systems that are going to do the basic stuff. And then you're going to have concentrated areas that do certain things. He'll get more into this fragmented system. I think that's where he's a little bit more specific. It will require restructuring how healthcare delivery is organized, measured, and reimbursed. So he's gonna, so the organization, less fragmented, more concentrated. How we're measuring, obviously, instead of measuring how many surgeries did you do, you're gonna measure how many patients did you improve. And then that's how we're gonna pay you. We're gonna pay based on what is measured. What's the word for these last two? Incentives, right? Isn't that where incentives come in? He wants to change incentives. You change incentives by measuring different things and paying for different things. As long as you keep measuring the old stuff, what are people going to do? They're going to keep doing the old stuff. As long as you say, hey, you're paid for how many surgeries you do, then they're going to do more surgeries. So he has a picture, and this picture could go into your paper. In one picture, he has his components. We'll talk through some of these. Some are more easily understood than others. He has what he's called an integrated practice units. That's where he's going to get rid of the fragmentation, have much more concentrated in certain things, measure outcomes and costs for every patient. A lot of this is measurement. It's activity-based costing. How much does this cost? How much does this cost? What's the outcome? Is it worth that cost? Move to bundle payments for care cycles. That's really radical. So right now, it's you go to this doctor for your heart, you go to this doctor for your diabetes, you go to this doctor for this doctor for this. He says, no, you're a patient. You have these health issues. We're going to handle them as one integrated way. You're going to see that in the movie. Now, in the movie, when I watch this in the movie, my first thought is, wow, that looks really expensive. So you got this room of professionals sitting and talking about a patient. You have an ENT, you have a heart doctor, you have a dietitian. They're talking about this one patient, about what do we need to do to make this patient more healthy. Doesn't that sound really expensive? But he's saying that's better than having them go to those people individually that doesn't know what the other person is doing. They may be giving them medication that's making the other one worse. You know, all these kind of, let's get them together and let's say, hey, based on the totality of this person, we have these experts. This is the best plan for this person. So watch that in the movie and just see what you think about that approach. But a bundled payment. So you go to one place and everything, they look at it and they're going to give you, you're going to pay, the system's going to pay for making you healthy, not for treating your individual pieces. Integrate care delivery across separate facilities. So making sure we're talking to each other and across geographies. So different facilities and geographically, we've got to get so that we're all working together. And I think that's probably going to be his biggest challenge. And then you notice it's got arrows everywhere. I'm not a chart person because I don't think that way. I can never communicate with IT people because their charts like, what in the world, you got too many arrows in this chart. But essentially what he's saying, this is all got to be working together. Every piece has got to support the other. And then the bottom part is IT, information tech, digitization. That's got to be the platform for all of this. We got to automate, got to get away from paper, got to get to these medical records where you have everything all in one record. All right, so now he's going to get more specifics. Narrow goals such as improving access to care, containing costs, and boosting profits have been a distraction. There's the Affordable Care Act, improve access to care. I think if you asked President Obama about this, I think he would agree with a lot of this. So why did he stop there? Because politically, that's probably all he could hope for. He didn't do much on containing costs. He did do some, but I think they're gonna find over time it just didn't have enough teeth in it. Boosting profits, that's the distraction. Access to poor care is not the objective, nor is reducing costs at the expense of quality. Say, hey, we can reduce costs, let's just stop operating on people. Well, that's not gonna be good. People are dying, so that's not good. So increasing profits is today's misaligned with the interests of the patients because profits depend on volumes, not on results. In healthcare, the overarching goal for providers as well as every other stakeholder must be improving value for patients, where value is defined. So this would be a good quote to put here. If you're are y'all copying and pasting as you're going? So that would be, can you copy and paste from this article? You're able to do. I guess I should have asked you all have this loaded, right? You're all with me. So if you can copy and paste one, that would be a really good one. That's a good succinct statement. Where value is defined as health outcomes achieved that matter to patients. That's all one thing. Health outcomes achieved that matter to patients divided by the cost of achieving those outcomes. That somewhat implies that there are good outcomes for patients that we're not going to do. And why is that? This patient's life will be greatly improved if we did this, but we're not going to do it because why? Costs too much. Would American citizens go for that? In the UK, they've gotten used to that. No, you can't have that surgery, it's too expensive. Well, then I'll go to Italy and have it done. No, you can't do that. I don't think that would work in the US, but that's the approach. We don't pay for that, it's too expensive. And that may be a big reason why UK's healthcare costs are much cheaper than in the United States. Again, the same thing, we're going to see this in another place, moving away from fee from service toward performance-based reimbursement. This to me is the biggest problem I have with his proposal. It sounds wonderful, but the practicality of this, performance-based reimbursement, I just don't know how you do that. People have talked about this with the police as well. Would you rather police get paid, be incentivized for how many tickets they give, or they get paid for how few accidents we have? Which would be the better incentive for the police? What if you pay them based on how many tickets they give out? Would that be a good for society? No, you would hate that. But what if you say, hey, you get paid police if we have fewer accidents and fewer people die on the streets? Well, that sounds wonderful, but how do you actually do that? What are the police going to say? Hey, I can't control that. We'll say, you've got to figure out how you do your policing so we drive better. Well, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Would that work? Can you think of a practical way to get that to work? It'd be really interesting. So essentially that's what he's seeing him do. Well, with something I think is far more complicated, which is hospitals and doctors and pharmacies, seems a lot more complicated than police, but that's essentially what he's saying. These pressures are leading more independent hospitals to join healthcare. So he's saying we're already seeing this, the reduction in fragmentation. Independent hospitals to join health systems and more physicians to move out of private practice and become salaried employees. That's what he means by reducing fragmentation, all right? So if you're unsure what he means there, that's a great quote right there. So maybe that quote up above, replace today's fragmented system. I would tie that quote in with this one right here. Everybody see that? Can I go on, or y'all keeping up with me? Y'all probably cut and paste faster than I do. So here's another summary of the model. The strategy agenda for moving to a high value healthcare delivery system comprises of 6 pieces, organizing around the patient's medical condition rather than physician's medical specialty. There's 1. Measuring costs and outcomes for each patient. Developing bundle prices for full care cycle. Integrating care across separate facilities. It's essentially the same thing as this, but in different words. So that in different words. Expanding geographic reach and building and enabling IT platform. So you have it in words, or you have it in a chart, or you can do both. So the key is on understanding this, do you understand those 6 pieces? That really is the key to all this entire article, understanding that piece. So what does he do? He goes through each one of those. So number 1, he says, organizing around patients' medical conditions rather than physicians' medical specialty. What is that? Also known as organize into integrated practice units. Make sure you know those are the same thing. Everybody see that? He's saying it in 2 different words. Organizing around patients' medical condition rather than physician's specialty. That is called integrated practice units. Now, I forget what the Affordable Care Act calls it. We'll see it in a later article. It's something real similar. It's, I think they call it affordable care units. I don't think it's exactly the same thing, but it has some similarities. All right, so this is going to be pretty tough because doctors, nurses, hospitals, they don't like being herded in a certain way. They're professionals. They know their profession. Don't tell me how to do my job. So this is going to be pretty tough. At the core of the value, so he says this is at the core. That's a pretty important term. At the core of the value transformation is changing the way clinicians are organized to deliver care. The first principle in structuring any organization or business is to organize around the customer and the needs. You see where he's going here. Let's start with the patient. Let's don't start with the doctor. Let's start with the patient. In healthcare, that requires a shift from today's siloed organization by specialty department and discrete service to organizing around the patient's medical condition. We call such a structure an integrated practice unit. It's a team made up of both clinical and non-clinical personnel, provides the full care cycle for the patient's conditions. So again, you're going to see it in that one hospital. That room's full of people. I don't know how many people it was. It seemed to me, if my memory is like 20 people sitting in that room. Probably all 6-digit salary people sitting in that room, talking about one person for like 30 minutes. But his argument is those 20 people are still involved, except before the patient went to them one at a time. Now they're all in room 20 at a time, spending the same 30 minutes versus them spending an hour independently with the patient. So maybe you can make that argument. Now, I don't think the patient was in the room. Would you want to be in the room listening to them talking about you? Do you like being in a room and the whole room is talking about you and you're not allowed to talk? It'd be kind of interesting. You might not want to be there, but maybe you want to be a fly on the wall, maybe, and listen in what they're saying. It's like it might be a little disturbing at points. IPUs not only provide treatment, but also assume responsibility for engaging patients and their. That's incredible, isn't it? They don't provide you treatment. They also make sure when you go home, you're doing what you're supposed to do. He wants the doctors and the nurses and the hospital staff to be responsible for how you behave when you get home. If your care is to lose 50 pounds, they're now going to make you do that. That's why I love, again, Chris, that Ron Regan Your doctor's only when you walk in his office, he can just insult you all he wants. You need to exercise more, you need to lose some weight, you need to stop smoking, you need to stop drinking, you know, it's like, yeah, now you can pay me $100 to tell you all that. But not only are they going to tell you all that, they need to make sure you now do that. That's pretty incredible idea. By providing education and counseling, encouraging adherence to treatment and prevention protocols, supporting needed behavioral changes. Should your doctor be responsible for getting you to stop smoking? And they're saying the doctor is not only responsible, but her pay is going to be dependent on her getting you to do that. If she can't get you to stop smoking, she gets paid less. All right. What did he say up front? Fundamentally new strategy. Does this sound different? Sounds pretty radical, doesn't it? Does it sound too big brother to some of y'all? It's like, hey, if I want to keep smoking and, you know, that's up to me. It's my choice. In an IPU, personnel work together regularly as a team. There's that other word, team, toward a common goal. This is a pretty important phrase. I mean, I don't want you to like copy and paste everything in yellow into your paper, but I keep saying, wow, this is really key. But maximizing the patient's overall outcomes as efficiently as possible. Not only are you responsible for getting the patient to stop smoking, but you can't spend a lot of money doing it. Right? How do you do that? So I had a friend in Costa Rica who was a chain smoker. He wanted to stop. So he asked me to buy him the patch. And so I said, sure, I'll do it. And my deal with him was, you stop smoking, you don't have to pay me back. You don't stop smoking, you have to pay me back. And then I went to HEB and said, oh, this thing is like 2 years of his salary. He's never going to be able to pay me back. And I don't know if he ever stopped smoking. I don't think he did, but I brought it to him. Boy, have y'all seen those patches? They're extremely expensive. Wow, it was just, and I think it was like behind a locked glass. It was so expensive. So I didn't realize that. I mean, that by itself is an incentive to stop smoking, because my word, it's going to cost you more to stop smoking than it was to smoke. But now they're saying it's now your responsibility, and you have to do it as efficiently as possible. So if there's a better way, you got to get better. So this is like, we're going to pay you based on getting him to stop smoking and doing it as cheaply as possible. Maybe you're going to have some 7'2" guy show up at their house every Thursday and check their ashtrays. I don't know. You know, what are you going to do? And you pay that guy $50 every trip. I don't know. You got to figure it out. He mentions some facilities. Remember, for that extra 10%, when you see some of these facilities, one's mentioned in the video. He mentions this one. You could actually go to their website and see if there's anything different about what they're doing. Do they actually promote this type of thing on their website? That could be part of your 10%. There are firms out there, there are groups out there doing this, that they have proven they can do things cheaper and get better results at the same time. So here's one of them, Virginia Mason Medical Center. So they have an IPU, Virginia Mason Medical Center. The impact on value has been striking compared with regional averages. Patients at Virginia Masons miss fewer days of work. Are they measuring what matters? They miss 4 days of work instead of 9. Need fewer physical therapy visits, 4 versus 8. That may be why they're missing fewer days at work. In addition, MRI scans to evaluate low back pain has decreased 23%. Better Care has actually lowered costs. So they're getting better outcomes for patients, and it's costing them less. How are they doing on the equation? The numerator is going up, the denominator has come down. That's exactly what he's after. Has also increased revenue through increased productivity rather than depending on more fee-for-service visits from unneeded or duplicate tests and care. The clinic sees about 2,300 new patients per year compared to 1,000. And it does so at the same space and same number of staff members. They're getting more customers. Why? Because they can. They're more productive, they're more efficient, so they have more access, they have more ability to see more patients. So they've almost doubled, well, not double, but up 80% on their patients, and they didn't have to add any new buildings, new staff. That's pretty impressive. Whenever IPUs exist, we find similar results: faster treatment, better outcomes, lower costs, better market share. So essentially what he's saying, what's that term in economics y'all learn? Is it Pareto efficient? You remember that term? What's Pareto efficient? When was your last economics class? Anybody remember Pareto efficient? I don't know how to spell it. Pareto efficient. There it is. Definition is a situation where no one is worse off and at least one's better off. That's Pareto efficient. How do they do here? The patient's better off, the hospital's better off, quality insurance, no one's worse off. That's Pareto efficient. That's what we're after. That may not be the case here. When you watch the video, one of the guys is going to say, yeah, we're doing better, but we're making less money doing it. So maybe it's not entirely that. Maybe the healthcare system's having to give up some on profitability. But his implication is they're actually making more money by doing this because they can see more patients with the same resources, so they're more productive. If you want more definition on IPU, he gives a little bit more definition here. We've seen most of this. Multidisciplinary, it's a lot of key terms here. Organized around the patient, multidisciplinary teams. They're all part of the same unit. Takes responsibility for full cycle of care. That includes education, follow-up. A single administrative and scheduling structure. So, they're arranging all of that. Dedicated facilities. Again, the team measures outcomes, costs, processes, and meet on a regular basis to discuss the patients. Joint accountability, that's what we're looking for. It's a group of people who have been told, you've got to make this person better. You can't just tell this person, hey, you need to stop smoking or we're going to have to operate on you when you want to operate on them because you make money operating on them. No, you're going to be paid for making them healthier. All right, questions on the IPUs? That's probably our longest discussion. I think the others will be a little bit quicker. Y'all see what he's talking about there? Does that seem too good to be true? Now, what's his strongest argument? Isn't that his strongest argument? We've done it and it works. That seems pretty powerful argument to make. I seriously doubt that Virginia Mason is doing everything he's talking about here, though. So I bet there's some pieces missing, but at least he's saying it's on the right track. All right, so what's the second thing then? Measure outcomes and costs for every patient. You notice that was part of his IPU too, but this is a really tough one. Measurement's always tough for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's complicated. Secondly, once you set up the measurement, people start managing to the measurement, not the purpose of the measurement. So this is kind of, I talk about Russia. Russia scored really low on ease of doing business. So they moved up the list. How did they move up the list? By becoming easier to do business? No, by manipulating the data that they collected at the World Bank. That they weren't any better, but they looked better on paper. So that's the problem with measuring outcomes. If you can manipulate those numbers, you start being incentivized to make the numbers look better, not to make the patient look healthier. So it's always an issue with any kind of measurement. Rapid improvement in any field requires measuring, a familiar principle in management. Teams improve and excel by tracking progress over time and comparing the performance to that of peers inside and outside of organizations. Rigorous measurement of value, outcomes, and costs, that's pretty critical, is perhaps the single most important step to improving healthcare. Now, what did he say on the number one? At the core. What did he say on number two? Single most important step. All right, so we got 2 steps of the single most important steps. So we'll see what number 3 says. So he gives some examples. The only true measures of quality are the outcomes that matter to patients. When those outcomes are collected and reported publicly, providers face tremendous pressure and incentives to improve and adopt best practices with results improvements in outcomes. So he's not just saying measure it, he's saying measure it and report it. So what does he want? He wants hospitals to know how they're doing. He wants them to advertise that, and then he wants patients to do what? He wants patients choosing hospitals based on their outcomes. That's pretty radical. Right now, hospitals hate reporting this kind of stuff. They may be measuring some of it, but they hate reporting it. You're going to see that in the movie. The UCLA guy, the guy that gets beat up in the movie over and over and over again. He's going to keep arguing, yeah, our numbers are pretty bad. That's because we have the toughest patients. We get the sickest people, all this kind of stuff. And okay, fine. You report your numbers and then show us the measurement that your patients really are sicker. All right, so here he talks about the outcomes. You can, and I have no trouble with snipping and putting these into your papers, and then maybe give an example of 1 or 2 of them in your paper. As you can see in the chart, this is what he means by outcomes that matter. For example, blah, blah, blah. Maybe pick 1 or 2 of them and talk about it. Look through and see which ones mean the most to you. That makes it more meaningful for me reading your papers. If you want me excited reading your paper, you can say, I'll look through that list, and to me, what I would find most critical is this. That to me tells me that you're actually thinking and getting into it and excited about what you're getting into here. The outcomes that matter to patients for a particular medical condition fall into 3 tiers. Tier 1 involves the health status achieved. Health status achieved or retained. Patients care about mortality rates, of course, but also function. So if you want to summarize this, you might say tier 1 is health status. For example, mortality rates and functional status. All right, so that's how you put it into your own words. In the case of prostate cancer, it's 5-year survival rates. You want those to be 90% or higher. Would you want to know that for your doctor? But would you also want to know incontinence and sexual function? Would that be important? Yeah, that probably would. One doctor, hey, you go to this doctor, you have a 40% chance of needing adult diapers for the rest of your life. Over here, it's a 5% chance. Which doctor would you go to? Is that important to you? By an adult having to use incontinence, you know, that's I know a lot of people, senior citizens, that is, boy, that's a big part of their life. It's once they lose that ability, boy, it's really radically changes their life. If one doctor is 8 times better at that, then boy, that's where you want to go. So it's not just survival rates, it's also how well they do. You're going to hear this in the movie. So at the very end on the prostate cancer, they're not going to give you the details, but you're going to be able to tell from their body language. So he survived, but he lost out on something in here. And he's going to say, but that's okay, but so at least I survived. And then the movie's going to say, well, maybe the surgery saved his life, but there's 13 chances out of 14 he didn't need the surgery at all, and he would have been perfectly fine. He wouldn't have had to face one of these 2 things, or both of them. What is he thinking? It saved my life. Why? Because if you have to give up on these 2 things, it makes you feel better to say, well, at least they saved my life. So, you know, that's important. We're going to see this in some of the other articles. You're going to be shocked. You know, survival rate of 18% versus 1%. I mean, the death rate of 1% versus 18%. They're pretty radically different. Tier 2, outcomes relate to the nature of the care cycle and recovery. High readmission rates. Frequent emergency department bounce back rates. That may not make it that you're going to die faster, but do you really want to go back to the hospital in an ambulance if you don't have to? Wouldn't you rather them not give you an infection? Wouldn't that be a little nicer and not leave a sponge inside of you so they have to open you up again? But they are expensive and frustrating for both providers and patients. A level of discomfort during care, how long it takes to return to normal activities. Significant delays before seeing a specialist for potential ominous complaint can cause unnecessary anxiety. Delays in commencement treatment prolong the return to normal life. Even when functional outcomes are equivalent, patients whose care process is timely and free of chaos, confusion, and unnecessary setbacks experience much better care than those who encounter delays. This is a big issue for the UK. I was reading an article recent in the UK. The wait times are just really bad right now. They're having COVID is a big part of that, no question. But wait times, people who need surgery and they're in much pain, their survival rate may be fine. The fact that they're in terrible pain, really need surgery, maybe not mean they're going to die earlier. Boy, they're alive. They can't go to work. They can't function. They're waiting for this surgery, and because the hospitals are backed up, they're having a 6 months wait on something they really want next week. It's not just a U.S. problem, right? Y'all see tier 2, tier 3, sustainability. So you got the surgery, you're back out there, you're back at work, but 6 months later, a part breaks. There's some problem with what was that? So a hip replacement lasts 2 years is inferior to one that lasts 15 years. If tier 1 functional outcomes improve, costs invariably go down. If any 2-tier and tier 3 outcomes improve, costs invariably go down. So he's got this wonderful thing. The patient gets better and it costs the system less money. You can't overemphasize that enough in what he's talking about here. He's not saying we found a way to make tier 1, 2, and 3 better, and we can also make costs come down. What he's actually saying, which is really amazing, if we do well on tier 1 and 2, 3, costs just naturally come down. We're not like we're not over there trying to force both sides down. We force this side down and just automatically the other side comes down with it. That's like the beauty of what he's talking about here. And it's pretty obvious, isn't it? If you don't have a bounce back rate, costs come down. Isn't that obvious? You don't have people coming back to the hospital. So if we do better on tier 2, then obviously costs are going to come down because we're going to be seeing fewer patients. Now, tier 1 to me is not so obvious because obviously if you kill your patient, that's going to save your costs in the future. So that one may not be so obvious, but tier 2 and 3 definitely are going to bring costs down. By failing to consistently measure outcomes that matter, we lose perhaps our most powerful lever for cost reduction. So it's so critical that you're getting this part of it. We improve the patient, and by doing that, our costs naturally come down. So if we're not measuring the patient's outcome, our costs will not come down. It gets you kind of excited, right? Man, when are we doing this? So questions on the second one. Let's see if he says the third one's the most critical one in this process. I don't think he says that again, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Where is the third one? Did I miss it? Is he still talking about measurement? There it is. All right. I guess he has a little bit more to say about measurement. All right, let's real quick. Don't remember this part, but for a field in which high cost is an overarching problem, the absence of accurate cost information in healthcare is nothing short of astounding. Few clinicians have any knowledge of what each component of care costs, much less how costs relate to the outcome achieved. So we need better measurement. We may be able to hide our prices for years inside insurance products, but that's going to end as more and more people move in the new high deductible. So we talk about the high deductible. What does high deductible mean? The patient's paying more, so the patient starts asking more questions. We're going to have to be able to communicate exactly what we're giving patients, employers, insurers for their money. Most hospital cost accounting systems are department-based, not patient-based. That's a pretty critical comment. I forgot about that comment. And designed for billing of transactions reimbursed under the fee for service. So the current measurement is based on insurance codes and what insurance companies need, not based on the patient and what the patient's interested in. I think this to me, it seems almost impossible, but he says it can be done. To determine value, providers must measure costs at the medical condition level, tracking expenses involved in treating the condition over the full cycle of care. This requires understanding the resources used in a patient's care, including personnel, equipment, and facilities. That's not all that easy to do. It really isn't. So you say an anesthesiologist shows up, and they spend 30 minutes or an hour. Their annual pay is this, but they're also in consultation over doing the, how do you actually allocate that person's time out? It's not easy to do. I did cost allocation when I was at USAA. It is not, they would ask me, how much time did you spend on the Cornerstone Mutual Fund? It's like, I didn't spend time on that fund. I spent time doing this, but that benefit, it gets tough. It really is not easy to do at all. The capacity costs of supplying each resource, the support costs associated with care, including IT and administration. How does IT say, well, this IT is for diabetes patients. This IT is for heart patients. Do they really, can they really break their costs down like that? Then the cost of caring for a condition can be compared with outcomes achieved. So I think there's some difficulties there. Time-driven activity-based costing. So activity-based costing is more of an art than a science. Providers are achieving savings of 25% or more by tapping opportunities such as better capacity utilization, more standardized processes, better matching of personnel skills to tasks, locating care in the most cost-effective type of facilities, and many others. That's kind of a, and many others means it's just kind of an example list. Virginia Mason found that it costs $4 per minute for an orthopedic surgeon or other procedural specialists to perform a surgeon, $2 for an internist, $1 for a nurse practitioner. In light of those cost differences, focusing the time of the most expensive staff members on work that utilizes their full skill set is hugely important. Yeah, so if you can get the cheapest to do it, you're probably better off. That seems obvious. We're going to see some articles where they intentionally didn't do that so they could charge more for the services. So we'll see some. They obviously knew that a new nurse practitioner could have done that, but they used the doctor because the doctor can charge $50 instead of $4. Clinicians and administrators battle over arbitrary costs rather than working together to improve the value of care. All right, so that measurement's a big part of it. I'm you can tell a little cynical on this part just with my experience with activity-based costing. Did y'all study activity-based? Did y'all take management accounting at all? Are y'all completely free of management accounting? Did they talk about ABC in there? Is that still a thing? So don't they make it look pretty easy in that class, right? Here's your costs, you allocate them out and all. I mean, looks pretty straightforward. I don't know any company that is easy. It's really tough. I mean, one person they haven't mentioned here is the CEO of the hospital. Where does his or her time go? Go ask the CEO of a hospital, how much time did you spend on the diabetes patients? What do you mean? I've been in meetings all day. I've been talking to board members. So it's not easy at all. The air conditioning for the building, how much of the air conditioning building was for the surgery versus the room? It's not easy. All right, number 3, bundled payments for care cycles. Neither of the dominant payment models in healthcare, global capitalization and fee for service. Capitalization, that's the HMO kind of model, directly rewards improving the value of care. Global capitalization, a single payment to cover all a patient's needs, rewards providers for spending less, but not for improving outcomes. So HMOs, their goal is to keep you from using the system. Fee for service, what do they want you to do? They want you in there as much as possible. He's saying they're both wrong. The goal is not to keep the patient around from the hospital. And the goal is not to get the patient into the hospital as much as possible. The goal is to heal the patient. If getting the patient to the hospital heals them, let's do that. If it doesn't, let's don't do that. Fee for service couples payments to do something providers can control, how many of their services, but not the outcomes. Providers are rewarded for increasing volume, but that does not necessarily increase value. The payment approach best aligned with value is a bundled payment that covers the full cycle of care for acute medical conditions, the overall care for chronic conditions for a defined period, usually a year, our primary and preventive care for a defined patient population. So this is children. Payment is tied. Now here is again, I get a little cynical. How does this actually work? I don't know if he went to the Virginia Mason site. You could see if they're actually doing these things. I doubt they're doing all of this stuff. Payment is tied to overall care for a patient with a particular medical condition, aligning payment with what the team can control. Providers benefit from improving efficiency while maintaining or improving outcomes. Boy, that seems really, really, really complicated to be able to accomplish. Sound bundle payment models should include severity adjustments or eligibility. So that's what the UCLA doctor is talking about. If your hospital is so good, you're getting the most difficult patients, you should get credit for that. That makes sense. Only for qualifying patients, care guarantees that hold the provider responsible for avoidable complications. So you should get paid less if your hospital has higher infection rates than other hospitals. That makes some sense. That probably would not be too difficult to do. Stop loss provisions that mitigate the risk of unusually high cost events. So yeah, I mean, some of them are kind of crazy. You amputate the wrong leg. Does that ever happen? Yeah, that happens. Should we work our hardest that hospitals don't amputate the wrong leg? Should that ever happen again? They call that in some of the articles, never events. Are there never events out there? Yeah, I would say if you go in with diabetes and you need to amputate your right foot and they accidentally amputate your left foot, that should be a never event, I would think. And mandatory outcomes reporting. Walmart introduced a program in which it encourages employees who need cardiac, spine, and selected other surgeries to take care of one of 6 providers nationally. Walmart's saying, you know what? There's 6 providers who do this better, do it cheaper. It might cost us $3,000 to take you there. We might even pay an extra $1,000 for a family member to go with you and stay in a hotel. But overall, you're going to be better off and it's going to cost us less. We're willing to do that. Is Walmart important? Is an employer with 2 million employees important to this equation? Yeah, they have a big impact. All of which have high volume and track records of excellent outcomes. Here they are. So if you want to research any of these, the Cleveland Clinic, we'll see them again. I can't even say theirs, Geisinger, maybe. Mayo Clinic, the 2 doctors I deal with in Costa Rica, they're both from the Mayo Clinic. Mercy Hospital, that sounds like a soap opera. Mercy Hospital, Scott and White, and Virginia Mason. So yeah, if you're looking for a way to do your extra 10%, maybe go check one of these out and see if you're seeing anything he's talking about. And then you would just put it in this part of the paper. So I went out and looked at Mayo Clinic. I was just curious if there's anything they have that shows that their focus is on the outcomes for the patients and not on more treatments, more surgeries. The hospitals are reimbursed for the care with a single bundle payment includes all physician and hospital costs associated with both inpatient and outpatient, pre and post-operative care. Employees bear no out-of-pocket costs for their care. Look at that, travel, lodging, and meals. Can you believe Walmart's paying for travel and meals for an employee to travel to get medical care? That's pretty radical. As long as the surgery is performed at one of those centers of excellence. Now, this isn't the IPU, this is Walmart. But they're saying Walmart is looking and saying, hey, the places that do this are so much better and so much cheaper. We're going to incentivize our employees to go there. So once you prove, Virginia Mason, that you are better, we're going to send you more business. And what did Virginia Mason discover? We are better, we are more productive, so send us your patients because we can take them because we got the room for them. You know, it's one of these kind of, everybody's, even Walmart's better off. Who's suffered so far in this article? Everybody's winning. Now, someone has to be losing, right? If you're spending less money, someone has to be losing. We haven't figured out who that is, but someone out there is losing. But all right, number 4. You understand number 3? Bundle payment. So you're not going to pay the surgeon, you're not going to pay the anesthesiologist, whatever. You're not going to pay this person, you're not going to do this, you're going to pay the hospital, this, you're not going to have a room rate. You know, there's one payment. This person needs this. This is the payment. Bundled payment, maybe negotiated up front. All right, integrated care delivery systems. All right, so this is that fragmented thing. How do we get everybody working together so we don't have the person going place to place and duplicate stuff? I mean, I discovered this myself. So I'm having this surgery. They tell me you need to go to this hospital before the surgery. You need to go to this hospital and get this care. Now, this was someone completely unrelated to my doctor. He had no control over this person. So I show up and the lady looks at me and goes, "Oh, I don't think you need this. No, no. Have you ever had this done before?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe." He says, "No, you don't need this." So, okay, fine. So I don't get it. I show up to my surgery and my doctor is cussing at me. "Why didn't you have that done? That was required. We can't do this until you do that." I go, "Well, the lady there said I didn't need it." And he's mad at me. Why is he mad at me? Because I should know what treatments I need. So I should have gone to medical school first and then go to see that person. Does it make sense for me to tell this lady that, no, I really need that? I mean, maybe I'm stupid. I think that was stupid of me. She's telling me you don't need to have this done. And I'm going, well, I don't know. You know, she could have called the doctor maybe, but she didn't. Now my doctor is furious. Fortunately, they could have it done while I was sitting there. He's just screaming at me. This guy's out of his mind. He's mad at me for being so stupid that they agree with this health professional that I didn't need something. So just crazy. There are huge opportunities for improving value as providers integrate systems. You see that word a lot in here to eliminate fragmentation and duplication of care. There's a lot in that sentence. I think that's a good way to summarize this number 4. And to optimize the types of care delivered in each location. To achieve true system integration, organizations must grapple with 4 related sets of choices. Defining the scope of services, who does what, concentration, this is a big one, concentrating volume, that's what Walmart was saying, in fewer locations. We got another winner here. It's United Airlines and Westin Hotel, right? Because we're going to be flying people around the country, and Uber. Choosing the right location for each service line and integrating care for patients across locations. I should have shown up for this test with a group that knew exactly what was going on. It's like none of them were talking to each other. It's just absolutely insanity. And that had to happen a lot. I remember I would show up to places and they'd ask me, "Have you had this done?" And the word they said was like 17 syllables. Did you have your what, blah, 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 and I'm like, I don't know what that is. And they look at me like I'm stupid. It's like, I got 3 college degrees. Let's talk about stock markets. All right, can we do that so that I can show how stupid you are while you're telling me how stupid I am? I don't know what you're talking about because I don't have a degree in medicine. Don't talk down to me like I'm some kind of idiot. But they do. It's just like crazy. I shouldn't have to figure this out. You should have this all worked out. And when I show up, they know exactly why I'm there and why I need it. Well, it should make sense. They shouldn't be asking me medical questions. So that makes a lot of sense. So he goes in those in more detail. I didn't get into those too much, but you can certainly, if you want to read through more detail. So a recent study of the relationship between hospital volume, operative mortality of high-risk types of cancer surgery, for example, found that as hospital volumes rose, the chances of a patient's dying as a result of surgery fell by 3%. Is that what it said? I'm sorry, y'all keeping up with me? I'm kind of going in order. How much did they fall? Is that an impressive number? 67%. Would you want to go to a hospital that has a 67% lower chance of killing you? I might be interested in that. Often much better off traveling longer distances. Would you be willing to travel 4 hours on a plane for a 67% less chance of dying in surgery? I would be willing to do that. What's the other thing you see here? They have the number, right? They're measuring stuff. They can tell you that if you come to our hospital, we have a 67% lower mortality rate than the hospital you would have gone to. That's convincing. Less complex conditions and routine services should be moved out of teaching hospitals into lower cost facilities with charges set accordingly. Like these medical clinics, you see them on the streets. I've gone to them. There's times I've gone to them when they were the perfect place to go. I had pneumonia. I went to them. They gave me the medication. My pneumonia went away. I didn't miss a day of cycling. So I was cycling with pneumonia. You've heard of walking pneumonia. I had cycling pneumonia. But he gave me what I needed. I went in there. I told him I thought of what I had because I had researched on the internet and I was right. So he says, "Oh, yeah." So he probably didn't like that I was telling him, "I think I have pneumonia." So this is important, matching the complexity and skills needed with the resource intensity of the location, which will not only optimize costs, but also increase staff utilization and productivity. That makes sense. And that's what he's saying, those units that he listed, those 6 units he listed above, that's what they're doing. Where does it make sense to get the care? So he actually, so now let's list one of the losers. Community hospitals. They're going to be losers in this case. Community hospitals love doing cancer surgery. They have that doctor that, hey, I think I can do it. I think I can do it. I was watching a video this weekend. That's not what you want. All right, expand you. That's a pretty important one, but it's an easier one to understand, I think, and that makes a lot of just logical sense. And this one, I think, is closely related. Geographic reach. Superior providers for particular medical conditions need to serve far more patients than in their reach. It's, to me, 4 and 5. I have a difficulty really distinguishing between 4 and 5. So if in the paper you want to combine them together, number 4 and number 5, highly related. If y'all see a difference, put it in your paper and teach me. I had a tough time distinguishing those two. Has anyone seen an obvious difference in those two? Doesn't that sound like what he just said? So I don't see it. Number 6 is IT. All right, so IT, we mentioned, was a problem, but it's also a solution. So here he's talking about IT being the platform for this. When you see the word integrated and teams working together, obviously information is going to be key to this. And so here he talks about the problem. Often IT systems complicate rather than support integrated multidisciplinary care. I mean, I'll give you an example. So I've got an ENT and I have an oncologist. They both have me do what every visit? Blood test. Do you think it's possible they could both use the same blood test? Do I really have to go and give them blood twice? But they can't do that. Why? Because they don't talk to each other. Often the systems are just not there. A value-enhancing IT platform has 6 essential parts. How many times has he said this? It's centered on the patient. Have y'all gotten that yet? It uses common data definitions. This is where Medicare comes in. Medicare has got to drive that. Medicare is the massive gorilla in this. Medicare is 70% of our healthcare costs. Well, Medicare, Medicaid, and Veterans Administration, that's 70% of our costs. They've got to drive these data definitions, because if Medicare doesn't use the definition, no one else is. It encompasses all types of patient data. The medical record is accessible to everybody. So you have a medical card, medical piece of information, and everybody has access to it. So what's the biggest concern everybody has is privacy. But, you know, who cares about privacy? It's all your doctors. You know, you don't mind they all have that information. The system includes templates and expert systems for each medical condition. You know, so we know what works best. We're not shocked when you get your data. Your data is in a format that the system can interpret it. There's a lot of AI in medicine going on right now, but AI, what does it need? It needs a lot of data that's in a common form. So AI is learning a lot. AI is starting to read X-rays and is doing it just as well as the actual experts are doing. That's pretty incredible. Why is it able to do that? Because you got a lot of data in X-rays. So you have all these X-ray pictures, and you have what the specialist said it was saying. AI is looking at that and coming up with the same conclusions, but they're fixing errors that this doctor who makes 20% errors and this one only makes 5. AI is seeing that, and now everybody has the same information, those templates. And I think that's the key to AI, is AI gives everybody the same information at the same time. As it learns, everybody learns together, and that's what the template is. Once we discover that, wow, when you see that, it means this, instead of every doctor learning that when they finally read that article, now everybody learns it nanosecond. That's pretty impressive. The system architecture makes it easy to extract information. That's kind of obvious. So we don't need doctors learning Python. Do you agree with that? Although they could probably do it. The doctors in my the MBA class are pretty smart people. Providers that cling to today's broken system will become dinosaurs. Reputations that are based on perception, not actual outcomes, will fade. We hope that's the case. So there's some other losers. Doctors who don't do well are going to lose. That sounds like a good thing. I don't even know why this cartoon's at the end. I don't think it fits, so you might be able to ignore that. Does that fit in this article? So I don't know what it means. I mean, it's probably a funny article, cartoon, but I don't think it relates here. If you want to put cartoons in your paper, that's perfectly fine. There's probably plenty of them that you can. I don't like the ones he has. I think I could have drawn the pictures in this article. So, all right, y'all get a sense. Supporter is a big chunk of this. It's about 8% of your paper. So you might even this weekend, maybe go ahead and summarize Porter, get it out of the way, get it into your paper because it's fresh in your mind. I wanted to do it now because this is going to come up when we get into the other more detailed papers. You're going to start seeing some of this stuff. Very similar types of things. So, all right. Where do we go next? Well, we're getting close. So you're going to do the movie, which I think you're going to, I think the movie is really quite good. Have any of y'all already watched it? Have I tried it yet? I think you're going to enjoy it, huh? Oh, actually this class, oh, that's fine. Yeah, I may have said that. I don't know what I said 3 minutes ago, so I may have said that. All right, so we have one massive thing to do here. Oh, I'm sorry, that's paper. Plus you're getting paper 1 done, right, for tomorrow. If you're a little late on paper 1, I don't really care because I probably won't start on it until Sunday. So I don't care. I'm real bad about allowing students to procrastinate, but that's what finance is. Finance doesn't have deadlines, accountants do. So if a professor doesn't count off much for lateness, it makes you procrastinate, then get out of finance. All right, so we have this massive number of articles. This gets a little tedious, but I'll try to go through it quickly. But there's some incredibly good quotes and there's some incredibly good charts in here. So it goes on for like 8,000 pages or something. I forget what. That may be a little bit of an exaggeration. 138 pages, but we're only going to look at the highlighted sections. And some of them are going to go pretty quickly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at it before each class just to make, because there's some places I'm probably going to skip entirely. You can just look through it. I do encourage you to look at the highlighted section. I tried to organize it. The problem with organizing it is some articles talk about 6 different things. And so it's hard for me to put them in one place. So, but it follows the rubric pretty closely. So except for the Affordable Care Act, I'll mention a few things on that. Your paper is not about the Affordable Care Act, but I do want to mention the Affordable Care Act. They use that Affordable Care Organization, the ACO thing. How close is that to what Michael Porter just talked about? So we're going to do this. We'll do it fairly quickly. And the best quotes, I think you're going to want to get some of these in. There's some pretty shocking stuff in these articles, no question. Now, what about references? On your paper, I don't need detailed references. So what I would recommend you do, like on the Porter, you can just say if you're quoting, you quoted from the Porter article. All right, now here it gets a little trickier. So in the other ones, you can just say whatever that guy, like how they killed my father. I forget who that guy was, or the very first one. You can just say it's from that article. Here we got multiple articles. So here it's going to be really picky. As you pull quotes, note the page number, okay? And remind me of that when we get in there, all right? So you can just say class articles, page 3. That way you can go back and find it later if you need to, okay? It probably wouldn't be that hard to find it because you can probably do a search on the words and find it pretty quickly. But I don't need you to tell me all of this. I don't need all of that, but at least tell me the page number so we can get back to it. All right. Now, if you're gonna put this on LinkedIn, this is a really good paper to put on LinkedIn. You might want to put a little more detail in it, so it looks a little more professional. That's up to you to do that. You could do that at the very end, as long as you have the page number. So you can then go back and link it in there. All right, so it's gonna get a little tedious, but I still think you're gonna find it because there's a lot of interesting things in here. Like a mammogram in New York, maybe $100 or $1,700. That's kind of shocking, isn't it? So we're gonna see some stuff like that.